Hello and welcome to What Happens If I Don't Get the Grades I Want. I'm Victoria Lambert, I'm the Telegraph's education editor, and I'm going to be your host for this evening. But to help me, I would like to welcome my guests first of all. So Courteney Sheppard is from UCAS. Courteney, welcome Courteney. And my other guest is Kedge Martin of Forward Career Coaching.
Hi.
Hi, welcome Kedge. Hi.
Thank you.
Right, let's get started. We're going to start with some questions that have been submitted. And the first one is from Bridget Tuff. She has a question regarding university offers. And I think this one's probably one for Courteney. My son's first choice university has been very disappointing in its lack of communication regarding plans for the course structure from September. In fact, it's committing only to 4 hours a week of face-to-face teaching time. This is chemical engineering, so this seems staggering. And there's been no responses from the department to any inquiries. So obviously, Bridget's very concerned. Could her son opt for his second choice university, even if he gets the grades for number one? Because the second choice seems to be much more ambitious in its plans for using bubbles and getting things going. Does her son have a contract with the first university? Can he go to the second university?
Question we get. So obviously the situation that Bridget's son will be unique to him, but many students find themselves in the position that they've got an unconditional firm place. They met the conditions of their original offer, and they are committed to going to that first choice, but they may also have what's known as an insurance choice, which is essentially what students would generally put as a sort of backup in case the grades aren't quite as good as they expected and they don't get accepted into their first choice. That doesn't mean you're stuck with that first choice. If you've changed your mind, there are options. So you can do what's called release yourself into clearing. And by going into clearing, you'll be able to go through and be accepted at whichever of the courses you want to apply to, as long as you have a conversation with that university beforehand and they're willing to accept you. So in Bridget's case, for your son, what I'd suggest you do is contact the second choice that's been giving you all the information and seem to be the course that your son wants to go on, and make sure that they'll be accepting students through clearing. Talk to them about your son's place, give them his personal ID number so that they're aware of his details. And then on the assumption that they say that they will accept him through clearing, then tomorrow morning from 8 o'clock, he can go onto track, or onto UCAS track, release himself into clearing. And then as soon as we get to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he'll be able to add that original second choice as a clearing option, which means he'll be placed there. So there is a process to go through.
Does it matter the reason? I mean, can it be any reason that you can switch between universities?
Absolutely. Any reason you want, if you've changed your mind, you can put yourself into clearing. Now, what that does mean is you'll be losing that unconditional firm place. So you won't have a place, and there is an element of risk in that. It does mean you're going into clearing, and what we always suggest is before you action that, speak to your uni that you want to go to make sure that they'll accept you through clearing. And once you've done that, then it's a pretty simple process. You can release yourself into clearing for whatever reason you want.
I can see a question's come up from Joanna Osborne, and it's actually pretty much mirrors a question we've already got from Bella Eccles. And that is about how you can appeal to universities to get a deferred place. How can you make your case and persuade them that your grades weren't what you expected or deserved? I mean, I think this is going to be a question a lot of people are going to be feeling. How do we talk to people as human to human and say, you know, my child really should have got something different. They can't get their place now. It's not fair. How do we talk to them?
Yeah, I totally agree there. So there's a few things to do, I suppose. So this evening, one of the best things that you can do is if you're worried about gaining your place, or if you're worried about your son and daughter gaining their place, have a look on the UCAS website and maybe jot down the contact numbers for some of the universities where they might want to apply to through clearing. When you pick up that phone and you speak to the admissions officer, it's important to have all of the relevant information to hand. So things like the grades achieved, the UCAS personal ID number and clearing number, so that the university can bring up the details of your son or daughter. And also make sure that they've read through their personal statement. So what the universities will often do is treat that phone call like a mini interview. So be prepared to answer questions about why you want to go on to that course, why you want to go to that university, perhaps some ambitions that you have post-university through a career or whatever that might be. And the university will consider those grades. They'll consider all of the contextual information about you. So perhaps where you went to school, they'll look at your reference, at your predicted grades, which you would have had. And then they'll be able to make a decision there and there whether they will give you an offer or not. So you can speak to 2, 3, 4, 10 different universities in that same way, collect up all of these offers, and then you can decide at 3 o'clock which one it is you want, add that as a clearing choice, and then you're good to go.
And so for universities, there's a central admissions office you can call. Is it individual for Cambridge and Oxford colleges? Would that be individual offices?
So Oxford and Cambridge would be their central admissions team. Okay. And what they would do is pass you on to the relevant college or the academic who's in charge of that particular course.
So everybody's got quite a lot of people on standby tomorrow, ready to take calls.
Absolutely. I mean, just at UCAS, we've increased our staffing from a nominal team of about 30 odd people. We're staffing up to just over 200. Okay. So it's a big effort, and universities up and down the country will be undertaking a similar exercise.
Yeah. We
have had feedback though from some parents and students that the universities are quite slow in getting back to them. Now, some universities will have a clearing hotline and people will be taking phone calls. Others will have an online web form. Others will be doing it via social media. So I think on behalf of the universities, I'd say just be patient. They will get through to you, but it might take a bit longer than normal.
Carolyn Mills has said, what time can I start calling the universities to ask about places through clearing? And what questions am I likely to get asked in return?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, actually. So all of the exam results that will be released tomorrow are under what's known as embargo. So legal agreements between UCAS, the awarding bodies, and the universities means those results cannot be shared until after 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So the earliest that any of those contact centres will open or any of the universities will start talking to you in a meaningful way will be from 8 in the morning. So that's what you can have down as your time to start contacting them. The kinds of questions which you'll get asked will be things around what interests you in this course, what is your passion. They might reference some of the elements within a personal statement. So, for example, you've said that you've done a Duke of Edinburgh award. What did you gain from that? Or you're interested in becoming a forensic scientist in some specialized field. Why is that? So illustrating your passions and what you want to get from that. I think the other thing to be quite mindful of is if you're calling with your son or daughter and you're on the phone, more often than not, the university will want to speak to your son or daughter directly.
Yeah.
This is a big decision. It's a big decision for them and for you, of course. But ultimately, what the university will want to see and hear is that your son or daughter has got the wherewithals to answer those questions in the first place and evidence all of that themselves, obviously with your support as well.
Kedge, I think that's quite an interesting point to bring you in, because when you're talking to people about what careers they want to do, it must be about the same stuff. How do you find the passion in someone? How do you say to them, how do I present myself best to a boss? Because actually, getting into university is exactly the same as impressing a boss, your first boss next down the line, isn't it? You've got to say the right things to show who you are.
100%, and knowing who you are is the most important step. And if you don't know who you are, then you're not going to come across kind of strongly when you have that telephone call. And I completely echo Courteney's point about what's your passion? Why are you doing this? I mean, find out I'd go back and even think about having the knowledge that actually you are so inspired that you want this course rather than you're just scrambling for a space. And people will know on the other end of the telephone, they'll know whether actually you're really keen on it or whether you just want a place. And inevitably, universities as employers will choose people that really show that they have the evidence that they want something. And so the most important thing is to know what you want.
Yeah. sorry, just picking up another one. Katrina Innes has said, does my daughter have to resit, or can she just negotiate on the basis that marks are short of likely exam results? So this is if somebody has got disappointing marks, maybe a B instead of an A, or a C instead of a B. Can you negotiate through that? Will you be able to have that conversation with your first choice who've said, yes, we definitely want you? Is there someone to speak to and say, yeah, I'm only a point short or a place short?
In clearing, and when students will be going through this tomorrow, the short answer to that is absolutely yes. You can talk to the university about your circumstance, why those results may or may not be as you wanted them to. The universities will also get extra data from UCAS, and that will be information from the school that you would have attended. So they'll take that into account alongside your personal statement and any other achievements that you may have done. So whilst the grades play an important part, they aren't the be all and end all. And as Kedge said, when you have that conversation with the university, outlining your passion and knowing what you want and why you want it will be really, really important. And you absolutely can negotiate with the universities for sure.
I think I'm going to just go sideways a little bit here. What are the options, the alternatives? If you're sitting there looking at a selection of letters of the alphabet that you really didn't expect to see, what else can you be doing? I know, I've been there. What can you do? What are the alternatives to actually going to university? I mean, Kedge, what do you see when you see that?
I think the first thing to think is don't panic. I think number one, try not to panic, because actually there are alternatives, and sometimes disappointments work out for the better. With hindsight, you kind of see that actually it's something good happened out of it. I also think it's very important to remember that about 600,000 people go to university every year. So you've got to, in a way, if you don't get the grades, it's worth thinking back about actually, why did I want to go to university? What was the rationale for me? What did I hope to get out of it? And actually, really, let me reconsider those thoughts again, because actually, with the great numbers going through, actually, you kind of look a little bit amorphous as you come out the other end. Yeah. And so many employers are they're actually looking for the soft skills. And you can get these soft skills either by kind of starting work earlier, doing an apprentice. There are lots of different apprentice schemes from kind of entry level to degree level. And actually just don't necessarily follow the herd or follow what you think you ought to do. It's not the be all and end all if you don't get them. And there are lots of options. There are sort of different training courses. You can go on business courses like TMA Academy. There's some kind of business media courses that you can go on. But the most important thing is to reflect on what it is you wanted to get out of going to university. Where else could you do that? And actually, what are the options? What's the great opportunity that not going to university will give to you? And it might be time to travel. It might be time to build up skills that will set you apart from all the other people that have gone to university. So kind of see it as a positive opportunity to grow on a different pathway. And the important thing is that a career pathway is not straight. It's a zigzag. And, education to date has been a kind of straight path. You start primary, secondary, and then you go to university. But actually, university isn't right for everybody. And there are great opportunities if you don't go to university.
What about gap years? Do we take gap years these days? Do you recommend gap years, either of you?
I think gap years are really, really important. They're a time to kind of be away from home. They're a time to grow. They're a time to become independent. And there are so many different things that you can do. I mean, even, with traveling being difficult now, there are kind of things that you can do just traveling in the UK. And it's you learn so many skills in traveling. But it's quite good also, you learn resilience, which is one of the core skills employers are looking for, and confidence and that sense of independence that actually you can deal with problems as they arise. Because throughout education, actually, most problems are dealt with parents on hand and everything similar to that. When you're alone traveling, actually, you have to really take much more responsibility. But it's quite good to have goals as to why you're traveling or why you're taking a gap year. Again, what is the purpose of it? What's the purpose of this? 6 months out, 12 months out? Set yourself some goals and then define exactly what those steps are to achieve those goals. But I'm a great advocate for gap years.
Courtney, do you think people are going to be taking gap years this time? Is that what you're hearing, or if people don't get the grades first time round, or?
Yeah, so back when lockdown first started and there was the announcement that all of the exams were cancelled, we had lots and lots of queries from students about whether or not they should defer their entry, so delay that to 2021. And actually, the UCAS data is telling us that more students are actually wanting to start now.
Okay.
So we're 1% down on the total number of people who wanted to defer than the comparable point in the previous year. So there's clearly an appetite for higher education. I think going on a gap year is great, and I personally did that before I went off to university. But I think in this current climate which we find ourselves in, if students were interested in going to university in the first place, think back to what that original reason was. And if you are considering a gap year as one of your options, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and not as a snap decision.
Okay. I'm going to get back to a couple more specific questions now. I know that quite a lot of people are thinking about the same thing, are interested in conversations about retakes. So where would you, if you've taken your A-levels at a sixth form college, where would you just sit the retakes? Can you sit them back at the same college, or will there be a central place? Do we know?
Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of refer to some recent information from the government which has come out today. So you may have seen in the news this terms being used called a triple lock to support students. Now, what this means is you'll have your calculated grade, which everybody will be getting tomorrow. Then if you are unhappy with that calculated grade, you've got two options. So option number one is you can appeal that, and you go through your school or your college where you were registered to sit the exam this summer, although you didn't obviously do that.
Yeah.
And they can register for an appeal, and then that will be reviewed, and potentially your grade will be based on your mock exams and any other information available. So that might mean your grade goes up or down. If it goes down, then you keep your higher grade. Of course, some students will be wanting to actually sit an exam and take the opportunity to do that themselves. And you register again through your school or college where you were going to sit your original exam. And they'll be able to give you the advice on the provision of where you'll be sitting that exam, the sort of timings and what that looks like. And then if you sit that exam and your result is higher than your calculated grade, then excellent and well done. That will be the grade that stays with you for the rest of your life. If you don't do so well and your calculated grade is higher, then that's the one that you keep. So that's why it's a sort of triple lock process, because the outcome of appeals or sitting those exams in the autumn will be for the benefit of the student, and the higher grade will persist.
Okay. Claire Groom says, will schools be obliged to help students complete the syllabus of any exams they will need to sit?
I'm not sure about obliged, but what we're seeing and hearing from lots of the schools and centres that work with UCAS, and there are over 6,000 of them that work with us, so we've got quite a loud voice, is that the schools will do everything they can to support those students through doing any additional revision and getting ready to sit those exams in the autumn. It's going to be a bit different because a lot of the students will have missed out on 4 or 5 months worth of education as per normal. So I guess with that in mind, if you are thinking of taking that exam in the autumn, again, think long and hard about the kind of stress that will put you through, and are you up for it, and is it worthwhile for you doing that? If it is, then great, get your head down and do that work. But if you're on the fence, then maybe chat to your parents, to your teacher, your careers advisor, and work that through first before lodging that registration for the autumn exam.
Kedge, what's the job situation like if you don't go to uni? Is there work out there? I mean, again, I think people are absolutely terrified about that.
I think we all know it's a very difficult time at the moment, which is why you have to focus on the most important skills, which is your personality, your confidence, your resilience, because as I say, there are lots of people who'll have a similar background, similar educational results, but the right talent as an employer, talent is actually very hard to find, and employers want to hire bright, confident, dedicated people who are, there are spaces to be filled, and there are jobs out there. I mean, the main sectors that are growing is obviously IT and digital technology. The less appealing kind of warehouse, but logistics. There are some companies that are really recruiting a lot, and in a way it's good to get a job now because it shows that you're flexible. It shows that you're kind of willing to take and it shows a very good attitude if you don't necessarily wait to the perfect job, but actually do something that kind of occupies you, gives you skills, which is sort of similar to getting an apprenticeship. Take the opportunity, if you're not going to further education, to develop the skills that then will be a real benefit to you when you go up against others in the interview process.
Yeah. Courtney, will the universities be taking students with lower grades than normal? Are they actually going to be kinder?
Yeah, so universities have said multiple times throughout this period that they're going to be as flexible as possible. And every year, universities will take students with grades which are slightly lower than their advertised or published entry requirements, and that will certainly be the case this year. So, if you have just missed out on those entry requirements, that you think you might not have a chance at a particular uni, give them a call and see what they say. It's definitely worth it.
Is that because some people aren't going? Is that because we've kind of got this situation where we know more people have applied than ever before? However, it's obvious that students from some countries may be put off because who wants to come here in quarantine? Who wants to come here and risk having online lectures only? If it's a big decision for people who live in the UK, it's even bigger if you live elsewhere.
Totally. And I think there will be more places available for what we kind of call home students, so those from the UK, with a slight reduction, an anticipated further reduction in international student numbers and potentially EU numbers. That doesn't give any guarantees though, so it's important to still be prepared when you have those conversations with the universities. And if you, like I said, if you have only just missed the grades, then there's a very high chance that they'll still take you.
I've got a question here from Ruth Campion Clement, who says, with a BTEC, will someone be able to go through clearing in the same way as A-level students?
Yes, absolutely. You will be able to go through clearing. You will also be able to appeal the grade as well, if that's what you want. So yes, for BTEC students, IB students, Welsh Baccalaureate students, A-level students, the process is the same.
And what about things like music degrees, which are going to rely on panel performances, which have been cancelled?
Yeah, those are a bit more tricky, and the universities have been looking at ways to do online interviews or assessments to support students and get them ready for those courses. But it will vary from uni to uni, but they'll still certainly be recruiting for those kinds of disciplines.
Yes, because they're not going to want to lose musicians or dancers or actors or anyone who has to do a physical audition, are they?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And they'll be doing everything they can to make the right provision for those students so that they can be fairly and accurately assessed, and also for them to be able to give the best of themselves within that interview or assessment.
Emma Donaldson says, this is quite interesting again, but back to the idea of exams, is if you can sit an exam in October, your A-level in October, could you not sit them next May, June in 2021? And if you did, which syllabus would you be working for?
Yeah, so I mean, the option is available to do both. If you were going to sit the exam in the autumn, so in October, you'd be following this last summer's syllabus. If you were registering to sit the exam next summer, then it would be the syllabus and curriculum for next summer.
Okay. And the other thing I think some people have also been asking about is that if you were to do your exams now, in October, would you, how would that work with being at university? So say you took your university place, but you still want to sit those exams, you've done the work, and you'd quite like to feel you had your real grades. Are you going to have time? Yeah.
You'll be dealing with potentially moving away from home, dealing with a different way of learning and studying for your degree course that you've enrolled onto. Then if you add that to studying and revising for an exam which you haven't been in school for the last 4 months or so, it'll put you under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I'm sure the universities will look to be as flexible and accommodating as possible, but you will still have 2 tracks of high-level study to contend with. So it's a big decision.
Yeah. Sue Todd says, what are the benefits of young adults working with a career or a life coach? So, Kedge, I think that's a question for you, really.
I think it probably is. I think, as Bill Gates says famously, everybody needs a life coach. Everybody needs a coach because, you know, parents are great, but they've actually got an agenda. Our teachers are great, but they've also got an agenda. They want us to do something. And actually, the benefit of having an independent, kind of trusted, somebody separate who can challenge you, who can support you, who can really get down to the grit of who you are and what you want without the noise of family, without the noise of school, without the noise of your peers. It's a fantastic way of kind of really growing into your own by having a coach and then defining your next steps, and they can help you manage your workload. I mean, just as Courtney was saying, the move to university is a big step.
Yeah.
And that throws up all sorts of things about friends, about money, about all the different elements that make up our lives. And having a coach is such a valuable kind of sounding board, an independent sounding board to help you work out and to kind of give you some advice as well. So I would obviously thoroughly recommend everybody has a coach. I have a coach. Everybody needs a coach.
Do it. Quite an interesting question here from, I've got a question here from, I'm trying to find, sorry, it's the heat in my study, which is making this very difficult. If you challenge the grades, how long will it take to be reviewed, and is there a cost?
In terms of how long, we haven't got that exact information yet. Ofwat have said that they will be publishing advice and guidance about what that looks like early next week, so you'll be able to find out. So in terms of whether there's a cost attached to it, if your grade goes up, then there's no cost attached to that. If the grade goes down, then that's something that you'll need to speak to your school or college about. But what I understand the process is going to be is that students will have the opportunity to appeal if they feel they need to, and there won't be any financial penalties for that. But that will depend on the nature of what your individual school or college had. So it's best to check with them first of all. But you shouldn't be penalised financially for that.
With the Francis McIntosh has said, is it better to contact an admissions department if you miss your grades, or should you go to the relevant school and the actual department? So
most of the universities will probably not open the lines for their individual schools or departments or the academics. So what would happen if you spoke to on the clearing line? You might well speak to one of the academics, because a lot of the universities have all of their staff on the lines to help out.
It's all hands on deck, isn't it?
Exactly. But what would certainly happen is if you spoke to, say, a temporary member of staff who was there just to help out on the day, you'd likely get a call back from the relevant person, the head of department or the relevant tutor or whoever it might be. So you would end up being able to speak to the right person.
Okay. Emily Murphy wants to know, does UCAS adjustment work like clearing? Can you explain the difference? What's adjustment, what's clearing?
Okay, sure. So that's a good question, Emily. So adjustment is for those students who meet and exceed the conditions of their unconditional firm place. Okay, so when you would have received all of your offers from the different universities, I'll use A-levels as an example because it's quite nice and simple. So say you were given the conditions of 3 Bs, okay, 3 Bs and that was that. And you get your grades through and you've got 2 A's and a B. So firstly, amazing, well done. Then you can register for adjustment tomorrow. And what adjustment means is you can phone around to any other university that you want to that might have higher entry requirements than you'd initially applied for. And if one of those universities has a conversation with you, you really want to go there and they accept you, then you don't have to do anything. That university will essentially take you, and you'll lose your original place because you'll be placed on the new course. So it's really for those who meet and exceed the conditions of the offer. However, so say you had 3 Bs, but it was dependent on one of those Bs being in chemistry, and then you get 2 As and a C, which if you looked at it from the UCAS tariff points, for example, that would be higher. But that C was in chemistry, you would technically not meet and exceed the conditions of the offer. But when you go through adjustment, you can register for it. You don't lose your original place. If you end up not speaking to anyone that you like and you want to stay with your original place, then that's absolutely fine. It's there as almost like a trading up opportunity for students to use.
If you, Sean Waters says, there are so few universities which run my course. How likely am I to get a place through clearing? So on those quite niche courses, do they turn up in clearing?
I think it will largely depend on the provision that the university has to accommodate a number of people. So we know for example, some performing arts courses, which are quite niche, the space within a studio or a center is limited just by physical space.
Yeah.
So those kinds of courses will be very limited in clearing. And if you do have a very specific niche course, then it might be that course isn't available. But what would be worth doing, though, is speaking to that university that's offering the course when you would have looked at it previously. They might have an alternative which you could swap to the course you want to do maybe in year 2 or after part of the first year. So I wouldn't give up. I'd speak to any universities which have got courses similar to the ones that you want, and see what options they have.
The way you say you're talking, you make it sound that like there really is a lot of room for manoeuvre, and actually the biggest problem is that people perhaps don't realise that or understand that they can actually ring up and say, yes, help me.
Yeah, you're right. And I think part of it is because it's such a big decision and it's a big next step in someone's life that it does often get built up to be something bigger than it is. And everybody who's working within the universities wants to speak to you. They want to talk through your options, and they really do want you on their course. Sometimes they just might not be able to. So having that negotiation, that discussion about why it is you want to go on the course, particularly for those which are available in clearing, and you can have a look on those on the UCAS website, you can definitely have those conversations, and the chances are you'll find a course at a uni that suits you.
What about, this is an interesting question. Kay Pearson says, what can we do to maximise the chance of getting accommodation if we have to go through clearing?
Yeah, so accommodation is something which some universities will almost guarantee accommodation in their first year. So it's worth checking on the uni's website. What unis often do, though, is they will prioritise accommodation for those who they were accepted through what we call the main scheme, so not through clearing. So in terms of maximising your chances to get that accommodation, firstly, it's again comes down to that negotiation when you talk to the admissions person on the end of the line, but also check the university's websites as well, because if they are offering guaranteed accommodation, they'll plaster that all over their website, and it'll be very obvious for you to see.
We're coming to sort of the last 10 minutes of the session, so I'm going to start going through some of the questions that have been asked. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this, if you've got some questions, now's the time to hit the chat, and we can try and help you out. I can see that Sean Gumbrell has said, with news today that we can use our mock results as our A-level grades, why would we need to appeal? Can't we just tell universities tomorrow what our mock results were?
What grades are, but those grades aren't certificated. So when you receive your grades tomorrow from whichever awarding body it was, you'll have that certificate with it. That is your verified result. If you appeal and you want to take your mock results, you have to go through that formal appeals process. So the new result is also certificated, and it also goes through the UCAS process. So we'll share that result and verify that result with the university. That's kind of why you need to do the appeal.
Okay. A. Curtis says, did we hear that Oxford and Cambridge are in clearing/adjustment?
So Oxford and Cambridge are usually not in clearing, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary. Now, it's an evolving picture, and that might change tomorrow. Cambridge certainly use adjustment, and they normally use adjustment for widening participation purposes. So if you're coming from a school or a background which doesn't normally have a high proportion of people that go on to higher education, then they usually reserve adjustment places for students who fall into that category.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about Oxford. I haven't seen anything about adjustment with them. But again, this is a different year.
Yeah.
It's worth giving them a ring to see what's on offer.
Would the same be true of medical schools? Do you get medical places in clearing and adjustment?
So the last few years, we've seen some medicine spaces available, not at all institutions. So some unis, I know, for example, UCL, it's very, very rare, if at all, that they'll have any courses through clearing. But like I said, historically, over the last couple of years, we've seen more and more medicine courses available. Of course, the government have announced that there are going to be some additional places for health courses, which include nursing and medicine. So there's every chance to have a look. You can look now, see if they're there. Look tomorrow, throughout the course of the day. Those courses are updated on an almost hourly basis, as and when they fill up. So keep an eye on the website, and you'll see if there's one available.
Does veterinary science ever get a look in on clearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Although veterinary science, in and of itself, being quite a specific branch of medicine in a way, the numbers are usually smaller for veterinary science, and the same can be said for dentistry. But it's not to say that they wouldn't be available in clearing. Again, it's a different year, so it's worth having a look.
Phil Snowden's just popped up. At 3 p.m. is clearing first come, first served, if the uni has already agreed to take you through clearing.
So universities will all have quite a sophisticated system in place to log who they've spoken to and who they've offered clearing places to. So from 3 o'clock onwards, it's not necessarily first come, first serve. There'll still be places available. But we'd always say, if you have received an offer from a university, then add that as a clearing space as soon as possible. Yeah. Universities will often give a time limit on how long that offer is valid for, because of course it's in the student's interest. You can collect multiple offers, and they'd normally offer a timescale of no less than 24 hours. So your offer will be valid for that period.
Amanda says, is law available through clearing? Do you get places for law?
Yeah, there are some places available for law. Again, that's a reasonably highly subscribed course. So maybe the selection of universities will be fairly small, but there probably will be places.
And Annabelle has said, re-medicine, does going through clearing, if not successful with grades, mean that we lose the deferred offer on the table for 2021, subject to getting the grades in the autumn exam sitting?
Not necessarily, no. That's a discussion for you to have with the university. So there's every chance that they would do that. Medicine courses, because they are so highly subscribed, each uni has got their individual policy for that, and some of the unis won't take medicine students on deferred entry. They'll want students to go straight from sixth form or college straight into to do the studies. But like I say, each one will vary, so it's best to have a chat with the admissions folk to see what the situation is.
Amanda Cassidy has said she wants to change her course tomorrow. Does she need to go on UCAS and replace the old personal statement with a revised one for the new course? It's a good question.
It is, and that happens quite a lot. So depends on what you mean, Amanda. So if it's just the course and you're staying at the same uni, then no, you don't need to do that. All you need to do is give that uni a call, and if they're happy to take you on the new course, then they'll update it for you. Easy as, you don't have to do anything. If you want to apply for a completely different course at a completely different university, you can't change your personal statement on the UCAS form itself, and universities are well aware of that, and everybody's in that situation. But if you do want to send any additional documentation or an additional personal statement to the uni, you will be able to do that. Maybe use some time this evening if that's what you want to do, to just have an amended personal statement you can send over.
Jennifer has asked, do you think it is likely that universities will relax some of their wider criteria, like having a specific GCSE or a particular subject at A-level?
Yes, I think that's very likely, very, very likely. It does depend, again, on how highly subscribed the course is. But if in the conditions of the offer, there might be pending GCSEs, so you might have to wait till next week on Thursday to find out what those are. the likelihood is that if you miss the grades for that GCSE, you'll probably still get accepted.
Sabina says, will the outcome of appeals be in time for clearing? I think everybody's really worried about this time.
Yeah, so the timing bit's quite critical, which is why if you do lodge an appeal, it's so important to tell the university that you're doing it, whether it's one of your original choices, or indeed if it's a choice that you want to go to through clearing. You need to tell them as soon as possible, and then they'll be able to reserve that space for you if they're willing to. Now, with UCAS, we have some guidance for when students need to meet the academic conditions of offers, and that is the 7th of September. It is an advisory date, so not all universities adhere to that, but the majority of them do. So as long as you meet the academic conditions of the offer by that date, you should still get your place.
Ion Bose says, during the clearing call, can we apply for multiple courses at the same university, or is it limited to one course per university?
So you'll be limited to adding one course at a university as a clearing choice, but within that conversation, you can talk about them about as much as you want. I suppose I would caution, if you were going too all over the show with the different kinds of courses you're talking about, you need to be demonstrating that you're interested in a particular area of study and you're knowledgeable about that and why you want to do that. So if you're going from biomedical science to psychology to art and design, it won't give the impression from the university that you know what you're on about. So it's possible to do that, but I'd caution against it.
Rachel Edson says, if you don't achieve your grades for your first choice and it is indicated on that your offer is rejected, but you do achieve grades for your second choice, can you negotiate for your first choice?
You can. Of course, you can negotiate that. It's all on the table. If it will depend on that first choice uni as to whether they'll accept you, and depending on how far you miss those grades, it's certainly an option, and you'd probably need to pick up that course through clearing.
Anne Anderson says, my daughter wants to defer and use the year to gain some experience in relevant work and look at applying for a completely different course next year. Can she do this or just decline the offer and reapply next year?
Both options are available, to be honest. So if she wants to defer, then chat to that uni and they can hold her place, and then she doesn't have anything to worry about and can enroll next year. If she's had a change of mind or maybe something will happen within that year, then absolutely she can reapply. No
Penny Snowden says, can you use your GCSE mock to actual grade difference as justification if you miss your A-level grades?
I think that might be stretching it a bit far, if I'm honest. I don't know that one. I would wait until we get the clearer advice from Ofqual early next week to understand what that looks like. I mean, in the meantime, it's worth sharing that information with the university when you talk to them, but I think they'd probably say we'll wait until the Ofqual guidance has come out officially before considering.
Okay, so Sue Heath says, if I appeal my calculated grade, but my valid mock grade is lower, do I get to choose which grade to move forward with?
Yes, you will keep the higher of.
So that's just the university. The higher the grade is the one that's going to win. So.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely, and that's what this the government's calling this triple lock procedure. So students are, as much as possible, not going to be disadvantaged.
Stephen Blatchford, I think this is going to be our last question, everybody. If you want to go to your original choice of uni and need to appeal, can you accept an offer through clearing? And then after the appeal, go back to your first choice?
Yeah, that one's a little more complicated. So if you accept a place through clearings somewhere else, you've lodged that appeal and that appeal comes back and you get better grades, so you're all good there. You'll need to talk to your original choice and ask them if they'll still accept you through clearing. So you need to release yourself from your new clearing place and then pick up your original choice through clearing. Well, so it's possible, but you need to go around the houses a bit.
Well, look, we're going to have to end this session there, and I think people are going to be just desperate to keep asking questions because obviously there's so much to learn about this. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, and thank you again for the guests, and good night.